Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Talia and I'm an occupational therapist. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my reflection on my first year after graduating from university and working as an occupational therapist. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe and consider following my new Instagram. It's at endless.education. And later in the video, I'm going to be talking about an online educational tool called Pickmonic, which I'm going to be recommending as a tool you could be using whilst you're studying at uni, as well as even now as a new graduate and as a graduate working in general. Hey guys, so I'm going to be testing out this voiceover method that people use and see how we go, to be talking about Pickmonic, which is this awesome audiovisual learning tool that we can actually be using as OTs and OT students, as well as a bunch of other health professionals are able to use this software. So if any of these professions or anything not mentioned interests you, this is probably relevant for you as well. And actually, luckily today we have been given a discounted price. So the link that they've shared with us is 20% off the regular prices. So I believe their 12 months comes down to $3.20 a month or something like that. So it's pretty affordable for us. So I just wanted to talk you through how I've already been using Pickmonic and some of the different things you can do. But I'll talk about that a bit later in the video. Let's get into it. Okay, so how was my first year in 3 words? Well, I couldn't even remember them. Exhausting, challenging, and strengthening. So I first wanted to start off with some highlights I reflected on about my first year. Number one, being offered positions in the first place for me was such a confidence building moment in itself, that I felt like other people believed in me and the skills or potential that I possessed to be able to fulfill jobs in their own practices that they owned, or become part of their team that they'd built for years. So being offered jobs in themselves was a big highlight of my year, because a big part of my year felt like it was shadowed by not feeling like I was good enough, or this imposter-like feeling. So reflecting on the year that multiple people, took a chance on me and believed in me and offered me positions was in itself a highlight. Number two, meeting all the clients and their families and becoming a part of their world, how small or large that might have been. I worked across multiple jobs last year, 3 in fact, and I got to be a part of lots of different clients, different ages, different backgrounds, different presentations and reasons I was seeing them. And I felt each of them I was able to connect and become, even if it was a one-off session, be a part of their timeline, be a part of their narrative and their life and their journey. And especially the clients and the families that I got to work with over a long period of time, months. I think that was a really big highlight for me, was seeing the child or the adult or whoever grow and really get to know the family, their values, and see progress as a whole unit, not just a client. And along that same train of thought, number 3 is building those therapeutic relationships, building that therapeutic rapport, finding out about each of my clients, what they liked, what they didn't like, just all their individual quirks which made them the individual that stood before me. I really loved finding and getting through to those, tricky clients who, that first session, they're not going to give you a smile, they don't want to let you in for whatever reason, whatever background, but slowly and slowly building up that trust and that rapport and peeling away all their little layers and finding out all these wonderful things about them and incorporating all their skills and their interests and strengths into sessions, and just seeing the brightness on their face when they realize that you listened to their favorite movie or what their favorite game is, Pokemon, and just including that in a session or referencing a story they told you a few weeks ago. Just seeing them appreciate a therapist, or as an individual, listening and remembering things that they've shared with you was a big highlight for my year. And I'm realizing now, looking at my list, that these points are quite similar and build on each other. So number 4 was being someone in my client's life, or my consumer, client, patient, whatever setting I was working in, whoever I called the person I was working with, being someone in their life who was able to help them see themselves more positively, but also push them when they needed it. So a big part of what I like to do in my therapeutic relationships is build that trust and rapport. When working with particular clients or particular backgrounds, it was quite important for me to realize that in some cases, I might be one of the few people in their life that's stable, consistent, trustworthy, and they feel they can open up to. So that's a big responsibility for us to be taking on as health professionals. And in general, having that responsibility and trust is something that we need to maintain, evaluate, and if we ever make mistakes, being someone who can model what a rupture and repair in a relationship can be like in a healthy way. Because we might be working with some kids, some teens, some adults who haven't really had that model to them. So it's really important that the starts, the ends, the middles of our relationship with our clients are actually opportunities for us to be modeling what a healthy relationship can be like and should be like. And I don't know what I'm going with that. That could be like a whole video. Hope some of that made sense. Number 5, just having fun with my teammates, so my colleagues, having fun with the kids, the teens, the adults. There was just a lot of fun last year. There was definitely a lot of tough, really tough moments and challenging moments, but in between those there was a lot of laughter, a lot of happy tears, a lot of memories made, even just within a single session, just having a really fun time with some of my clients, well, with all of my clients. Just really having a fun time with my clients and their families, even if it was a simple session where we were working on fine motor skills or cutlery, and we were able to turn it into a whole restaurant, and we had all these inside jokes, and it was just such an enjoyable experience for everyone. I really miss and treasure those moments. Now onto some of the low moments, if we could call them that. Number 1 was this sense, and this is a personal feeling, of feeling out of my depth. As an occupational therapist, there are so many different settings, fields, specialties, etc., whatever word you want to use, that we could go into and specialize. We have a scope of practice that can fit so many different types of clients / patients in so many different settings, whether it's in a hospital, in a school, in a home, in the community, in a kindergarten, in an aged care home, in a workplace, at a mining site, in a courtroom. There's so many places you can find us, and so it's almost impossible for us to learn every single skill we need and all the theoretical background for all those specialties within a 4-year degree. So of course, when we go into our first job, or each time you change job, there's probably going to be a lot of on-the-job practical learning through practical experience, and even as you go, going back to your lecture notes and researching yourself to help guide your practice. But this feeling of feeling out of my depth and that kind of imposter syndrome type feeling really shadowed how I felt in my first position in particular. I felt a lot of guilt that I wasn't doing enough, that I should know more to be able to help these families, or that I felt so bad that I'm a new grad and I don't know everything yet. I'm sure a more experienced therapist would have done this so much better. All those types of thoughts. And from talking to my friends who are in the same year as me, we're all out and are now in our second year, I think probably all of us had some of those thoughts to some degree, if not all of us, experiencing that throughout the year. And even as we change positions, I'm not going to be surprised if I start having similar thoughts 5 years down the track, but I might be better at handling them. And I've noticed within myself, because I've become more aware of those are the thoughts I'm having, that I'm able to now start challenging them and analyzing them. What evidence, oh, look at this, cognitive behavioral therapy coming in. What evidence do I have for and against this? Yes, I haven't done work towards this particular goal yet before in my practice, but what preparation have I done? What supports can I go to when I become stuck? Can I go to another clinician, a senior clinician? Can I go back to my research, journal articles, notes? Can I talk with the multidisciplinary team? Now I have a better sense of, yes, I might feel like I don't know exactly what to do right now, or I'm not 100% confident in what my next steps might be, but I feel better able to reflect on what my options are and what the use is of me dwelling the whole session in this guilt or shame or just pure anxiety about my ability to do what I'm doing in that session. I don't know if any of that made sense. Number 2, feeling lost. I feel like that's pretty similar to what I was already talking about, so let's just keep going. Number 3, slowly losing energy, drive, and passion for what I was doing. I felt myself last year really start to go towards that burnout route really quickly. I felt like I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to achieve higher than really a new grad is expected to achieve, and just putting a lot of high standards on myself to know and be able to do things that really shouldn't be expected in someone in their first year out. And over time, this pressure, the work demands, the feeling of sometimes being alone in all of this, it really got to me, and I started to lose energy and drive. And towards the middle of the year, actually, I really found it hard to get out of bed and just want to go to work anymore. And that's quite an awful experience to go through, feeling like, I just don't want to go today, like crying at work. You know, it's not a pleasant experience to go through. And again, I think that was a lot linked to my perceived self-efficacy. Like, do I have the skills to be able to do this job well? And the high standards I was setting myself, because doing this job well for me was doing this job excellently at the level of a 10+ year experienced OT. And so considering whether my expectations of myself were actually realistic for a new graduate, and now in my second year for a second year graduate. And I've really been able to have those conversations with myself with the aid of supervision with a more experienced clinician who can sit down or stand up and talk with me about all the standards and pressure I'm putting on myself, and whether that's actually a realistic and appropriate and healthy mindset to have going into my work each day. And I've listed all of these, but number 5 is low mood, and that just goes along with a drop in motivation, a drop in energy and drive and passion, not wanting to get out of bed, and just overall low mood, and just feeling really teary a lot of times. And so that was something I definitely had to overcome, and am still overcoming coming into my second year, because I feel like that the first 6 months of last year in particular really took a lot out of me, and it was a really big learning opportunity, and it was a really big chance for me to learn more about the pressure I've put on myself probably for years, and the realistic nature of what expectations I should have for myself, and what are unhealthy habits to do with my work style as well. So I think all the things I'm mentioning now are just a result of workplace demands, culture in the workplace, as well as the pressure and standards I held myself to. Okay, so if I could go back and tell myself anything before 2019 happened, it would be, I wrote it down, so I'm just going to read it out. This year is going to be a test of your strength and determination. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it, or that it's an excuse to give up as soon as it gets hard. You've got to keep pushing through and looking for things to relight your passion and energy. And I've written places, people, and work. So looking for people in your life who can support you and look out for you and relight that enjoyment of life and enjoyment in work. Places that bring you a sense of calm, peace, or excitement and enjoyment again. And then lastly, in work, looking for parts of your work that you really enjoy and look forward to and are grateful for, whether that's a particular session or goal you enjoy planning for, whether it's just the mundane tasks of laminating and cutting. I really actually enjoyed that because it was a break. It was something that I could just sit in peace and cut and laminate in between sessions, or if someone cancelled, I could do. So trying to find, and it can be really difficult when you're in a lower mood and a negative mindset, but trying to find a few things at the very least that you actually enjoy each day. I also wrote, taking a day off to look after yourself is allowed, and that was in capitals, and important. So that's definitely something I'm still learning about. I remember the first day I took a day off was very late in my time at my first job. I was just crying and I was about to go work with a small child, go off to a daycare, and I just said to myself, look, I'm not going to do that child any favors being in this state of mind right now, just being exhausted and just not feeling very good. So I asked a colleague, I said, what would you do? I still didn't have the confidence in myself to make that decision. So I asked a colleague, what would you do if you're in my position? She said, go home. And I was like, okay, I'll go home. And even now in another position, and I'm more aware of what's important for my mental health and well-being, it still can be tricky, and I still feel guilty, you know, taking a day off. I'll look at my calendar and be like, oh, they really need me to go, or I can't miss that meeting, it's been cancelled multiple times. So it is an ongoing struggle for me in that sense, that I can't just be like, you know what, I'm not well enough to go in today, sick, mental health, whatever, I can't go in, so I'll send my email. I still find myself having to justify, well, I could move that, or I'm not really seeing anyone today, so maybe it's okay. So I still find myself kind of getting trapped in that mindset that it's a bad thing to take a day off, but it's really not. It's really important, and it's allowed, and it should be allowed within all workplaces to take a day off for mental health, physical health, family health, whatever it is, to be allowed to take time off when you really need it. Okay, so moving into my advice that I would give other new grad OTs coming into their first year or first years.
Hey guys, so I'm going to be testing out this voiceover method that people use and see how we go. The guys at Pickmonique have created a tool that helps us to recall and integrate all these concepts and all this information that we're taught at uni that's specific to OT, as well as anatomy and physiology, which I had to go through when studying OT, and I'm sure most of you are having to go through as well. And it helps us better understand all these difficult concepts, all these difficult medical language as well. So Pickmonic has a bunch of different courses or pathways that you can focus in on, and so one of the ones I've been focusing on has been the psychiatric and cognitive systems, because that's just more relevant to what I'm doing now. So one of the things I've been going through is developmental stages like Piaget or Erikson's theory, but there's also a bunch of other pathways you can go through, so I'll show you them now. So when you come into courses, there's a bunch of different topics here. So there's obviously cardiovascular, lymphatic systems, which is important for us as well. We learn this in anatomy, but also edema and the lymphatic systems are also important for us to know if that ends up being where we're working as well as OTs. We have a bunch of other systems here, metabolic, endocrine, muscular, skeletal system. So this would have been really helpful for me when I was trying to learn all those muscles and all the cranial nerves and the bones when I was back in anatomy in first year. So I'll take you through one of these. Let's go through the facial and cranial bones. So what happens here is it breaks it down into really short 2 to 4 minute concept videos. So this one's going to take us through the cranial bones. So I hit play right here, and it usually gives you the option of doing a quiz beforehand to see where you're at now, and then afterwards as well. So spaced repetition. So you can play the video first or quiz yourself to assess your knowledge. I'm too scared to quiz myself right now on what I remember, so I'm just going to play the Pickmonic video.
The temporal bones are located laterally and are shown as the temple. The ethmoid, eat mud, is a bone that separates the nasal cavity from the brain. Finally, the sphenoid, see food, is an unpaired cranial bone and is a...
So first it's taking us through the educational content, so talking through the different visual anchors, and then it will go through the story about how all these things join together to help us really understand and retain or memorize this concept or this information.
You can remember the cranial bones with the acronym Old Pirates Find Treasure and Eat Seafood. Imagine this giant octopus climbing the posterior of the skull and doing battle with an old pirate. It's like the guardian of this golden temple, and there's treasure within. So the old pirate loses control of his ship.
And as we all know, it's really helpful having these speed options, like when we're watching lectures, slowing things down or making things a bit faster if we don't have a lot of time. And as you go, there's a little bit of information on the side as well, just to expand your knowledge on each area that they're talking about. And so next, we move on to the quiz. So it asks you, so it gets you to test your knowledge already, and you can ask for some hints. And then you can move on to the next concept, which happens to be facial bones. This online tool really covers a bunch of the areas that we're having to learn and keep utilizing as clinicians, not just after we finish uni, we need to forget all these things. We actually need to be maintaining this knowledge as it does come up in our work. So for me, especially the psychiatric cognitive systems as well as the nervous systems are really important for my work at the moment, understanding the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. They also include really helpful things about different conditions, so you can learn specifically and revise your knowledge on specific conditions as well as specific assessments that might be relevant to each of these courses. So they have the Glasgow Coma Scale, which we did learn at uni. So they've been adding some more videos on different conditions, so anxiety disorders, mood disorders, personality disorders, as well as some assessments and treatment videos as well, which is really helpful. As well as some really helpful information on medications, such as antidepressants. So this one would be definitely one that I would be interested in going through. So I'll leave the link down below to access that 20% off their plans, and if you're interested in using it, it's down below. Any questions, or if you have had any experiences using Pickmonique, let us know down below. Anything you've found helpful, any tips or tricks or things like that, I'm sure we'd all be grateful to hear about that.
Number 1, don't feel afraid of feeling out of depth. It's in these moments of great struggle that we really find out how strong we really are, what we actually know, and you know what? The areas that we don't know. And that's not a bad thing. That gives us areas to focus on after sessions, in between sessions, to really reach out for support and within ourselves using the resources we have already. And my second point of advice is your well-being is so important, and that means things like self-care and supervision are necessities. So number 1, don't feel afraid of feeling out of your depth. And number 2, there is a garbage truck. And number 2, your well-being is a priority. So what did I actually learn about OT and the OT community in my first year out? Well, more so than learn, it really confirmed that it would be so impossible for us to learn everything we needed to know, or even half of what we needed to know for every different specialty or field we could go into as OTs. And with that being said, that there's so much learning on the job that we do in every position that we go into. I also learned that in non-discipline specific roles, so for example a role that's title is mental health clinician rather than OT, so a non-discipline specific role could be filled by other health professionals, for example social workers, psychologists, clinical nurses, sometimes speech pathologists as well. In those roles, it can be an ongoing task to try and maintain and educate your team on what an OT lens is and how to apply that to the clients and families you work with and within your multidisciplinary team, where you sit in the team and what you're offering the team. It's an ongoing, evolving understanding that I have and that I talk about all the time with my supervisor, and they tell me that it's something they're still learning about years and years on. Another thing that was really confirmed about OT and the OT community is that our community is filled with such kind and generous people. The amount of random OTs, I guess, maybe that doesn't sound as nice, unfamiliar people who work in the OT profession I have met this year have been so absolutely lovely. Whether it's someone I'm emailing online, an OT student who's emailed me asking if I can help with their assignment, or if it's another OT that I've met at a conference who says, oh, here's my email, give me an email and I'll send you those resources I have, or I'll put you in touch with this other OT who works in the same field as you. You'll have a great chat, she'll be able to help you with this, or he'll be able to do this and that. Everyone I talk to is just always so willing to give advice, give tips, and help in any way that they can at that point in time. So that's just been such a wonderful part of my year. So lastly, what did I learn about myself in 2019, my first year as an OT? Well, I learned that I enjoy working with kids. I really enjoy working with teens, youth, young adults, and you know what, even adults. I hadn't had a lot of experience working with adults, and I wasn't sure if it was particularly the population that might suit me, but I did have the experience of working for a few months solely with adults, in particular men, in a mental health setting, and I really enjoyed it. And I think my interest and passion for mental health was definitely solidified last year. Another thing I learned about myself was one of my needs going into a new workplace or new role is that I would like to be a valued team member in the team that I work with, and that was something really important and that I experienced in different degrees in different positions that I worked in over last year. I felt the difference between coming into a job with a bunch of other new grads and really on the same page as them, same age, usually same life experience. We really got along really well. Then I had an experience of being probably the youngest in a team and really feeling disconnected from the rest of my team, and just the workplace culture didn't really match with my values. And now coming into another team where there's a range of ages, some people similar to mine, some people a little bit further away from mine, but I feel like we all share the same values, and it just makes coming to work a lot easier, and coming to people with questions or concerns just a lot easier to do. So that's definitely something I know I need in a workplace. Number 3, myself and a lot of my peers need to continue to prioritize and maintain our health and well-being, including our mental health, because it is so important and influential in our ability to provide outstanding and wonderful care that we can to our clients and their families as occupational therapists and as health professionals in general. Our mental health and well-being, I feel like, should be talked about a lot more. I also learned last year that it's okay to let go of some commitments, to free up some space in my brain, to reduce the amount of stress and pressure I'm putting on myself. The things I let go of last year weren't in themselves alone stressful and a negative experience. It was more that I'd taken on too many projects and was in too many groups and had too many commitments. It was more the amount rather than the quality of each of them. So it took me a while, but I learned how to say pause on some things and let go of some commitments as well, in order to prioritize the amount of time I needed for my self-care and to achieve the balance I needed in work-life, that work-life balance, which I'm assuming is different for all of us. The next thing I learned about myself last year was that I actually really like going to the gym, lifting weights, getting strong. I also learned you can buy edible cookie dough by the tub and have it delivered to your home. And the last one is, and it's a bit cheesy, and it's definitely an ongoing process, not something I achieved to the full extent last year, that I'm worthy of respect and love, and that I am enough, and you are too. That felt very uncomfortable to do to a camera. So how am I feeling now in my second year of being a practicing occupational therapist? Well, I'm worried that I'm not in focus this whole time. Well, I'm about 2 months into it, but I'm feeling oddly excited but anxious about the uncertainty that lies ahead with regards to where I'll be, what I'll be doing the whole year. Will I need to move? Will I need to change position? What's going to come up in my current work? But I oddly feel excited about it. I'm sure as those times and changes come closer and closer, I'll become just more anxious about it. But in general, I'm feeling oddly excited to take on those new challenges, because I know I've overcome a lot last year and I'm sure there's much more coming my way, but I'm feeling excited about it. So that brings me to the end of my long rambly video about my reflections on my first year as an OT. I hope if you're a new grad, or even however long you've been working, or even if you're in uni, let me know down below what are some of your reflections from 2019 to do with your life, career, education, anything at all, let me know down below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Consider following me on Instagram, endless.education, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video, because it can be a little while between them because life happens. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.